Here are some reminders for your success while you're solving these free response questions. Just a few things to remember in order to get as many points as possible when completing your work. So the first thing you want to do, the first thing you always want to make sure is that your answers have 3 decimal places. They always have to be accurate to 3 decimal places, which means when you're doing your work, you want to make sure that you're using 4 or 5 decimal places the entire time you're computing your answer. And then your answer needs to be accurate to 3 decimal places. So, for example, if you end up getting a number like 3.7125, you can truncate it and give them 3.712, excuse me, or you can round it and give them 3.713. Either of these would be considered acceptable answers. The next tip for your success would be only give units when they specifically ask you for them. You never want to give the units unless they actually ask, because if you get the units wrong, even if it wasn't part of the question, they will mark your answer wrong. The other thing to remember when working with units, for example, if they tell you T is time in minutes, and they say v of t is the velocity in feet per minute, and then they ask you to find the acceleration. The acceleration, a of t, would be v of t divided by t, or the slope of the velocity. So in order to find the units for that, you could literally just take the units and do the same calculations you did with the numbers with the units. So since velocity is feet per minute and time is minutes, it's the same thing as saying feet per minute times 1 over minutes, because I can keep change flip, which is feet over minutes squared. So my units in that situation would be feet per minute squared. But remember, you only want to give the units if they specifically ask you for them. The next thing you want to make sure you do is show all of your work sequentially. Show all work sequentially. So basically what that means is exactly the opposite of what I just did, showing you how to find velocity. Normally we organize our work and we continue with equal signs and we box our answer at the end because it just makes it neat and organized. It's easier for your teacher to grade it. But when you're answering these, in order to get yourself as many possible points, if I was solving the same exact equation from above, I would want to say, okay, my acceleration is going to then go to my velocity over my time, which is then going to go to feet per minute over minutes, which is then going to go to feet per minute times 1 over minutes, which gives me a final answer of feet over minutes squared. And I'm not going to box anything. I'm not going to use any equal signs. And I'm doing that on purpose because if at some point, say, for example, I made a mistake in the last step and I had written feet per minute cubed, cubed. Since I don't have any equal signs and I don't have anything locked in as my final answer, because they see that I had it correctly computed here, I would get the points for that. And they would kind of just ignore that this part was wrong and they wouldn't take off for it. Whereas if I had equal signs all the way down and I had said these are all the same thing, now I'm telling them that I think feet per minutes times 1/minutes becomes cubed, that they're the same thing, which is not true because we know it should really be squared, right? And I would end up losing points. So I want to make sure that when I'm writing my work, I'm doing it in a way that allows me to get as many points as possible. So I'm not boxing in my answer and locking in a final answer. I'm allowing them to look through my work and take the farthest step possible that is correct in case I make a mistake. I also want to make sure my fourth and final step for success is to make sure that anytime you're using a theorem to justify your answers, you never want to use a theorem, so like the IVT, the MVT, Rolle's theorem, things like that. You don't want to use them unless you have stated that the function is continuous. If you don't say that it's continuous, then you can't use the theorem. So anytime you use a theorem to justify, make sure you state that the function is, this is important, so it's really big, continuous. Without saying it's continuous, they won't give you the point for your justification. Even if you use the correct theorem, even if all your answers are correct, you have to say it's continuous in order to get the point for using the theorem.